Welcome back to Morning Express, and let's now talk books. And today, Bonnie Tunya reviews The Stone Hills of Maragoli by Stanley Gazemba. Take a look.
Hello and welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Morning Express book reviews, where we get you closer to the books that you should be reading. Today I'm joined by a gardener who's picked tea, who's done it all. He's funny man Stanley Gazemba, the author of The Stone Hills of Maragoli, a Kwani publication. Often we don't get a book that takes us back to the village life with such vivid execution, and now Stanley joins me to just help us understand the thoughts behind The Stone Hills of Maragoli. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Stanley, I mean, it's a very fascinating book because every people in the city get a hold of this book and it takes you right back to your village, regardless of which community or setting you come from. What was the motivation behind such a book?
Now, this book was inspired by Christmas time in the village as a kid, because I was taken to boarding school fairly early, in class 2.
Wow,
So,
your parents didn't like you.
Yeah, they thought it was good for me, but I felt it was like I was being taken to prison.
Right.
Yeah, because there are so many rules in boarding school. The food is bad, and it's like you're always responding to bells and all that. So to them it was prestigious, and I know it was expensive, but to me it was like I was being taken to prison. So every time I would come back home to the village, I would be like, wow, this is the life I want to live. And if you've grown up in the village, you know that the best time to be in the village is Christmas time.
Right.
Christmas time, that is when the harvest is in. There isn't much work to do. There is a lot of festivity. At least
everyone is generous.
Yeah, during my youth.
Yeah.
The people from Nairobi and other towns have come to the village, and I mean there's a sort of party mood all over the place. So in writing this book, I was trying to capture that mood of December, the finest month in the year, and I was trying to recollect the things that I really liked about Christmas, and I mean everything that really made it the best month in the world. Yeah. So I think that is part of the story behind.
You've created a fictional character of Ombima. Any relation to probably a real life person or an event in your life?
Now, the people in the book are fictitious. I mean, everything is fiction, but you know that there is no fiction that isn't informed by real people and real events. So sometimes what I do is I take a bit of the character of someone I know, and then I work it into another person's character. Then I create now my own character. Right. So it's difficult to point to someone in the book and say, oh, this is so and so.
Please talk to us about Ombima. What sort of a person is Ombima?
Ombima, the character. Right. Well, he's the wealthiest guy in the village. He is, he's the proudest guy, obviously because he's wealthy, and he is a go-getter. He's sort of, I don't know how to put this. He wants to have everything, and he wants everyone to like kneel down at his feet, and to recognize that he is Ombima.
Right. Yeah. Your book is fast-paced, if I may describe it that way. I mean, from the first page you start looking at it, I mean, there's all this activity setting. There's this hard-working character who has to steal. He understands stealing is bad, but he has to go on and steal, and you kind of get a feel of you get on the book and it starts moving. I mean, what was the move behind that kind of a design? Because it's not the kind of book that by the time you're ending chapter 1 you still haven't figured out everything. There's a bit of you set on the ground and keep running.
I think what I was trying to do is to preempt what would come at the end of the story. And in a way, you need to do that as an author in order not to lose your reader. Because unless you're doing a very serious literary kind of book, you need to use the techniques of, say, filmmakers.
If you're to describe a picture of these people enjoying life, what would it be?
They are natural. They don't have too many needs. They could be living like in a one-room kind of hut. There's a certain vibrancy in their life.
Right.
They are not bored. They are real. They are themselves, despite their poverty. As opposed to this other group of people, of Kenyans, if you may call them that, who have everything, and yet they are like, oh, they're just bored with life.
Looking at life, because we can quite rightfully describe the book, it's really about life and what people go through in their lives. You've mentioned the changes in the modernity and the village life, but what is this thing that stood out for you as a different, positive or negative, when you compare the two settings?
I think is what I said. We are gaining something and we are losing something again. We are losing that sense of community. Now people are doing things as individuals, as opposed to in the past when they used to do it as a community. Yeah, and we only realize that we need to move as a community when there is a crisis. For instance, when a strange disease strikes the maize, that is when people realize, hey, we need to work together because we are going to be hungry. Or when there's a calamity, like say a flood, that is when people now come together. And I think is bad that as we are progressing in Kenya, we are losing the values that used to define us as a people. I think that's why at the moment we are grappling with the idea of, you know, Kenya, the description of a Kenyan, you know, the identity of a Kenyan. I think it's going to be an even bigger problem as we move on.
How are the relationships different between the two settings you've just described? Interpersonal relationships, because I mean the relationships that we are seeing right now in the modern life, where everyone has their own thing, they're living, you know, they are secluded in their fence and all that, and the village life where it was all communal and everything. And you've said we're losing some and we're gaining some, but what are some of the positive things that we can borrow from modernity that were not in the past?
I don't think there's a lot of positive stuff in the modern settings. Right. Honestly, right. I'll give you a recent example of the Westgate attack. You saw the police, was it the Minister for Defense, telling us we are going to have to come up with 10 house Nyumba Kumi thing, as in the police would have to police 10 houses each, meaning we are accepting that we are now living in, you know, in these urban spaces with neighbors that you never even talk to, right. Neighbors that you hardly ever meet, because you just walk in and out of your house, and that is it.
All right, very quickly, what went into the title, The Stone Hills of Maragoli?
Actually, that title was suggested by the publisher, the original publisher of the book, Jimmy Makosi. There's a scene in the book where the two lovers met in the hills, and I was describing the setting, and he really felt like this is the best description, the best scene in the book, and he wanted to get the title out of there. Mm-hmm. So I initially called it The Hills of Maragoli, but I brought in the stone aspect to you know, to make it much more artistic.
Yeah. What kind of audience are you writing to?
I think my reader is the general reader, someone who wants to read an entertaining story, someone who wants to engage with the story that can challenge them in a certain way, in that they can reflect on some of the things in the story. I don't quite write for a very elitist audience. if I were to compare myself with, say, Shoinka and Achebe, I would go with Achebe. Yeah.
Interesting.
I hope that answers the question.
Right, and of course, no book review is complete without a book reading. So, Stone Hills of Maragoli is here with you. Please pick to us your favorite line.
In the air over the village that evening was a feeling of pregnant tension. A thick, dark cloud loomed heavy above the grey thatched huts that dotted the steep green hillside in kindred patches, threatening to whip rain any moment. As thunder boomed on the distant ridges, hemming in the village to the west, the villagers became frantic. Young men and boys lost patience with their cattle, trying to herd them out of the rain, while the women hurried down to the river with pots and metal pails on their heads to fetch water to prepare the evening meal, hoping the rain wouldn't catch them on the way back. He ran along a winding path covered in fine red dust that meandered through the homesteads downhill into the valley, separating his village from Kigama, the next one. Above this, gently snaking valley in the midst of which a stream of icy crystalline water tumbled swiftly over rocks and other impediments, hung a thin wisp of mist, the color of smoke from well-dried wood. It was getting thicker and denser, and soon it would be impossible to see across to Kigama. Then, when the storm struck, it would descend upon the country, shrouding it in a thick blanket of fog and driving hail, the strong winds ripping branches of the tall eucalyptus trees like avenging demons. I think I ended.
All right, asante sana, Stanley Gazemba, author of The Stone Hills of Maragoli. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for your
for
time.
having me on your show.
All right, asante sana.